From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. Hey, Jimmy, do you want to go to therapy?
I'd love to.
Great, let's go. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Oh, good references. Jacob did not see that coming.
That was good.
So that is a little thank you to our friends at Ice Cream Social who did a whole cross promotion for us and basically just parodied our show for like a solid 20 minutes.
It was fun.
It was hilarious.
We had a good time.
It was so fun. I'm telling you, dude, an April Fool's episode in which they just do our show. We don't even tell anybody what's happening, and they just take our names and just go.
It's fine.
It'd be fine. The board will never know.
It's fine.
It's fine. We'll write a waiver for this.
I mean, there's got to be an easier way to get sued. For all of us.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a faster way. But that was really funny. Even as they were like doing it, they were like Jacob was jumping in, like quoting parody law. He's like, according to NRS 552. I was like, nobody's listening to this, Jacob. You're fine. The board does not care. They have no idea what's going on. Nothing stops you guys from doing any kind of advice. So, but that was a lot of fun.
Pretty funny.
I don't remember what episode that was, like the number of it, but it's 500 something.
Yep, 2 of them ago, I think.
That's crazy. So exciting stuff, Nick. Welcome back to fabulous Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You finished your tour going through pretty much everywhere but here, right? Where all did you go?
Let's see. Reno, Helena, Montana. Then,
wow, Helena?
Helena?
Oh, that's pretty.
It was beautiful.
Is that where you posted the picture of the Mall of America?
Yeah.
The place that looks like the chocolate factory from Willy Wonka?
No, that's in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
These are different places.
Okay.
Minnesota's not
completely,
Montana.
Yeah, completely different places.
Are they completely different places, or are they slightly different places?
So.
I feel like you could get lost between the two and not know where.
So I did fly into my trip to Iowa. Actually, was for family.
Oh, okay.
Because my nephew was being confirmed. He's in the Lutheran church.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Confirmation.
So it's a cool little family tradition. Be a part of it. It's important for his life.
And it was
very cool.
It was very funny. A lot of Jesus jokes at my expense.
Oh, nice.
I mean, that I was saying that no one else was laughing at. I think I got a little obnoxious towards the end.
No.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because you get confirmed, and what they did in their church. So
were
when
you heckling during this? You're like drinking your beer, like, you're doing great, buddy. Thanks, Uncle Nick.
I was heckling a little bit, but so when they do communion, they have in my church when I was younger, they had wafers. Right?
Yeah.
Here they have like
the
an
crouton
actual.
au Christ.
No, they have like a loaf of bread.
Oh, okay.
They
pick
actually
a piece off
break
of
it off and all that. So anyway.
Well, that is the legitimate way to do it, Nick. I mean,
I don't know, whatever. But each of the confirmands or whatever, as a gift, they got a loaf of bread.
Oh, okay.
Like communion bread. So afterwards, we're sitting.
They're giving away the body of Christ.
Yeah. So it gets even better.
Sweet deal.
It gets even better because
sign up for that, man.
We were at his house, and I'm sitting there. He's 16 years old, and I'm sitting there watching him, and he's eating his bread and tossing some of it to the dog. And so I'm like, he's literally he's sharing the body of Christ with the dog.
It's
I thought it was hilarious.
That's what you should have been like.
So
like, I am appalled, buddy.
Yeah.
You just got confirmed.
But
You're
I wasn't
blowing
appalled.
it.
I thought it was hilarious.
I mean, there's a lot of really specific rules in ecclesiology. Like, can you put jam on that bread? I don't know.
You should be able
Does
to.
it have preservatives? Are you trying to, preserve
Is the body of Jesus not sweet enough for you?
Yeah. What's the problem here? Like, are you going to add to this? You can't butter Jesus. And if you toast it, it's getting really weird. We're not going to allow that.
So they always do this thing like for kids. So they do like a kids thing in the middle of the service. And so all the little kids come up, and so the pastor kind of talks to the kids or whatever. And so it's like the Sunday before Halloween. So he's got candy.
Okay.
So he's got like Jolly Ranchers and stuff. And so he's talking about Jesus and I can't remember what he said. Laura's in here, but he says something about the sweet love of Jesus is much like a Jolly Rancher.
Nice.
And so
Jesus loves you like sour apple.
I leaned over to Laura and I was like, well, I hope nobody chokes on the sweet love of Jesus.
That would make international headlines.
But it was fun. It was a good trip overall. So then on the way back, I bought our book
Oh, yeah.
for the book club.
Yeah. I saw that you posted a picture of that.
I did. Yes.
I'm going to get the audiobook because I can't read.
So we planned out a lot of time for this book club thing.
Yeah.
We may not need it all.
Okay.
I
Short
picked
book.
up. Yeah, I picked up the book in Minneapolis, and by the time we landed in Las Vegas, I was done with it.
You read the book?
Yeah.
The whole book?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's like 220 pages or
We're
something.
in the wrong business. We should be writing books. You can write
Oh.
200-page books and get New York Times bestseller money.
Oh, well, I don't want to ruin this. I don't want to get too far into the book club.
You wrote a book?
No,
Oh.
but I was upset because I could have written this book.
Ah, yes! We're both going to complain the whole time.
Yes.
Yay!
And no, it's a great book.
Yeah.
It's a great book. I'm just
But
a
you're
little-
like-
I'm bitter that
Yeah. I bought the book.
That-
yeah.
and
I could have winged
I
this.
could have thrown this together.
We're in the wrong
It's-
business, Nick. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. That's exactly how I feel. So if you're listening and you're like, what the hell are they talking about? We are doing a book club for our Patreon community. You can go to patreon.com/therapy. And for as little as $1, you can become a THERAPAL. And you can join the Patreon community and you can join us in the book club. We're going to be reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by, I think, is it Mark Manson?
Yeah.
And that's going to be our November book of the month. And we're going to read it and discuss it. And we're going to be posting video and audio of us discussing the book, which already is going to, it's very promising. It sounds like it's going to be off to a very good start, that we're just going to be pissed the whole time.
No. We won't be pissed. It is a good book. It
Yeah.
is a really good book.
I'm
But-
going to
but you're
complain.
you're gonna
Have
read
you seen
it.
my Twitter feed? Like, all I do is just bitch.
So maybe we did plan for enough time.
Yes. We might need we might roll this thing into December so that I have plenty of time to complain. But speaking of interesting things for which we might complain, we have some new data to jump into today, and I'm really excited about the study. So I saw this come through the wires, and I thought, wow, this is a really, really interesting study. So something to the effect of like 40% of new relationships are now actually occurring online through one of the online mediums, whether that's an app or that's like a dating site. No matter how deep that dating site is, whether they match personality or people can just swipe one way or the other, 40% of new relationships actually are created online. So there's this new study that came out, is published in the Journal of Science Advances, and it studied hundreds of thousands of online dating interactions to answer the question of whether there really is such a thing as a dating league. Like when you say a person's out of your league, like that kind of thing. They wanted to figure out, do people match up according to league? And is there some kind of way to detect that? So the article was actually titled Aspirational Pursuit of Mates in Online Dating Markets. And I'm actually going to link to it in the show notes. If you want to click the description underneath this pod, you can see it. And it uses back-end data from a popular free online dating program, and it did this in 4 major cities: New York, Boston, Chicago, and Seattle. So the study only focused on heterosexual adults and attempted to answer 2 questions. First, what are the most desirable traits that people look for in a mate? Now, this is statistically speaking, obviously, so it's over the course of hundreds of thousands of people. What qualities did somebody have that made them more or less attractive to others? And it's general demographic kind of qualities. And then the second question they wanted to answer is, do people tend to seek others who are equally less than or more desirable than they are, based on popularity? So the study defined desirability by the attention that a profile gets, right? So if a profile gets lots of page views, lots of messages, that's probably a more desirable person. And so they were wondering, the second question, do people tend to reach up, reach down, or reach across once we delineate what these leagues are? So the results of the study were fascinating, and I broke this down into several different things, and I'm going to present the data, and if at any point, Nick, you want to pause me and jump in, we can discuss it, because there's actually quite a few takeaways. But here's the thing. So there's 2 big questions, right? So the first question, what were the most and least desirable demographic traits for men and women? So here's how it broke down. Now, it breaks down by gender. So these are female qualities, okay? So according to the study, now, before we even start this, I want to be careful. We're going to discuss race. We're going to discuss education. We're going to discuss lots of different things. We're going to discuss age. Please know that we are just presenting science, and science does not care about people's opinion. It does not care about, what offends people. It's just data, right? And so some of this data could be offensive. We're not endorsing it. We're just saying this is what their study revealed.
Some of you may be offended, and you are welcome to tweet to us at Audio Guide Jacob.
That's
So all your tweets go through him.
God damn it.
Send all that hate mail to Jacob, who you didn't know he was actually the lead studier on this research. Yeah, he's the
Good work, Jacob.
Yeah, it was Jacob Smith et al.
It's just it's just what I did in my basement.
Yeah, it's all data from his own dating profile.
All in one weekend.
All I found out is everybody sucks. Not answering
Fact.
my mess. Facts. All right, so here's the first question: what are the most and least desirable traits in women? Okay, so this is what men tended to pursue in women. So, from least desirable race to most desirable race, men tended to least pursue African American women, then Latino women, then white women, and at the top of the chart was Asian women. And so Asian women were actually considered the most desirable according to this study. Now, they also had a second area, which was education level, right? Because these profiles often, figure out, well, how much education you have. So there's high school, there's postgraduate, like graduate school, and then there's college. So when it came to women, men least desired women who only had a high school education. The second least that they desired was women who had a postgraduate education, and they most desired women who had college or some college. So that's really interesting, right? Because especially that one, it's like, okay, so men are not attracted to you if you don't have enough intelligence, but then not attracted to you if you're too smart.
No, but that actually that does not surprise me at all, because
Right.
I've noticed that trend, not really with me, but a friend of mine whose
name
been
was
dating for,
Click Klanchman.
right. No, a female friend of mine who she's working on her PhD.
Oh, okay.
And has noticed this trend that she actually brought this up to me once. She's like, it seems like you can be too smart.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
so her and one of her friends actually tried doing this little experiment where when they would go to a bar, they would pretend to be stupid.
Or just not bring up that part of the profile, right?
Well,
Yeah.
no, like they would actually pretend to like have very low level jobs, very low level education, and just see what happens.
What did she notice?
See if they got more attention. I think
they got more attention.
I think they did. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had female clients talk about that, like who have graduate degrees and who actually choose not to reveal that. Like they reveal it down the line, like after interest has been established and the person is like, they've been on several dates. Then they'll say, hey, I haven't brought it up before, but, I'm in graduate school or I have a graduate degree. It's not a big deal. But it's amazing how women tend to have to play that down. So, yeah, the study seems to confirm that. So it says, okay, women who, least desirable, high school, most desirable, having college or some college, with postgraduate work kind of being the second least desirable. And then the third piece that came out for the women's study was age. Now, this one's interesting. According to the study, and I have a really interesting graph that I'll actually post to our account so that people can see this, but it shows like this arching kind of bend. And basically, the age desirability peaks at 18 years old. So women who are 18 have the peak interest, okay? That's the highest possible interest you can have in profile views and people interested in you. And then on average, the thing arcs downward, and it drops in desirability 6% every year older a woman gets, finding its lowest point at about 60, because that's about how far the study went, is all the way to about 60, 65 years old. So those were the three big takeaways for women, right? Race as far as what's least desirable to most desirable, education, and then age. So then obviously they have the same exact thing for men. So you want to comment on that?
I have so many questions.
Jacob, jump in.
I have questions.
Yes, unpack.
Who are they talking to?
Yes, so these are all heterosexual adults.
Okay.
And they're studying how these interactions happen on the website.
So these are men.
These are men of
looking at
huge age,
qualities.
All ages.
Just adult.
All of them shaken together, all adults 18 plus. They noticed that when it came to female profiles, that those were the rules of profiles. That if you had less education, that you were...
So now I need to know who uses these dating sites.
Right.
Now I need to know the profile of the person using the dating site.
That's a good question.
Not only
That's a good question.
Motive.
Okay.
What's their
Right.
motivation?
Are they
being
trying
there?
to date?
Are they hooking up, or
Yeah.
are they looking for a long-term mate?
Is this Tinder or Match.com?
That's a really good
Right.
question, right? That's a really good question. So basically the study described it was careful not to name the dating site because I think they didn't want to, like, it wasn't sanctioned by the dating site. But it's a free online dating site. So I would guess from the description it sounded like Plenty of Fish or something to that effect, or it's just like a free online site where you can post a profile, and so you're able to tell a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah. So there has to be a profile. So you have
It's
to
not
rule
just
out
pictures.
You'd have to rule out Tinder because Tinder
Yeah,
doesn't
probably
have
isn't Tinder.
a profile that you have to like
Right.
areas that you have to fill out.
Right. Yeah. So again, that's a good question, right? There's a lot we don't know, but one thing that comes, I think, to average everything out is we're talking hundreds of thousands of participants
Sure.
over 4 major metropolitan cities scattered across the continent. So, like, that tells us, like, okay, this is interesting data, right? Now, if you're a listener or if you're Jacob and you hear this and you go, I don't resonate with any of that, like, that does not in any way line up with my desires or what I find attractive, that's totally fine. It means that you are not part of the average.
Well, no, that's
plot
fine.
point.
And when I was the part that made my ears really perk up was the 18-year-old part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm in my late 30s, and I cannot imagine going after an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And no one that I can think of that
Right.
I know that is in my age group, I don't think that any of them could imagine going after an 18-year-old.
This is a good point.
Right.
And actually, I'm glad you brought this up because we also have to ask, okay, so where are the largest numbers of participants on this
Exactly.
website, right?
And that's why I say I want to know
guys
who's
that
using
are in
the
their
websites.
late 30s, they're mostly settling down. They're not using it as much. But people in their early 20s are probably a higher amount of the average. So that's how they break it down, as they say,
That's what I'm
well,
wondering.
users of this website tended toward this. But the breakdown of 6% drop in desirability every year older woman gets, that was able to be borne out throughout the data. But that's a good point. Like 18 being really high, it's like, why, what? You know, like, you know, I'm in my mid 30s and like, what? Like, I don't even think I could have a conversation with somebody who's like 22.
I know that I cannot.
I know that I cannot.
Nope.
All right, so let's flip the script. Let's look at it from the other side, okay? So most desirable male traits, okay? So this is what the ladies liked. So first, we get the same thing, but it's all a little bit turned on its head. So when it came to race, the least desirable male race, according to women on this thing, Asian men ranked the lowest, then Latino men, then black men, and then white men, okay? So that was kind of the structure on that. Now, when it came to education, it also was a little bit reshuffled. So the lowest desire was high school, the second was college, and the highest in this case was postgraduate. So unlike women, where postgraduate work, having a master's or a doctorate, was kind of could be seen as a negative, for men it turned out to be a positive. Now here's the really interesting part that I continue to laugh at. When it came to age, okay, for men, the desirability of age was the exact reverse of women. So, with the least desirable male age being 18 years old and the most desirable age being 50, men became on average 3% more desirable every year they were alive. Yes! Woo! Champions!
Finally, some good news.
Finally! Yes! So guess what, fellas? It's looking up. If this was not your year, the odds are 3% better next year. My birthday is December 1st, so on December 2nd, I'm going up 3%.
It's like a cost of living raise.
Yeah, it's inflation. Men have desirability inflation. So it's interesting because I have a really great graph that shows like these curves and how they're like basically crisscrossing, you know, for
Right.
women. And so for men, you know, you get a little gray on the sideburns and things are looking up for you. So that was the male to female breakdown that the study taught us. Okay, so that was the first question, right? So the first question they wanted to answer was, you know, what are those demographic traits that people tended toward, which we can now describe as more or less desirable? Okay, so they broke it down into female and male. Now the second big question was this: what happens when people attempt to match with somebody, right? So are they reaching up, are they reaching down, or are they reaching to the middle? Now there was a lot of interesting takeaways here, and I'm going to present them, but I'm sure you guys will probably have some feedback on them. So the first one is the majority of men and women, both sexes, they do, on majority, target people who are at least 25% more desirable than them. So people do tend to reach up a little bit, which I think makes some sense. Now, women who approached a more desirable man were more likely to get a reply than the opposite. So if a man reaches up and tries to, match with a more attractive female or more desirable female, she's less likely to reply. But if a female reaches up and tries to reach for a more attractive man, he's more likely to reply. Which I think makes sense, just in the sense that women are probably getting 3-to-1 messages, you know, to the guys anyway. So if a guy gets a message, he's like, woohoo! Like, I don't care who it is. Like, somebody's trying to talk to me. Attention, yay! So another big takeaway, a man who approaches a less desirable woman is 2 times as likely to get a reply from her than if he had approached a more desirable woman. But even a less desirable woman is never more than 21% likely to reply to any man. So if you're a stud and you reach down for a woman who's less desirable than you, your odds are never better than 21% that she even gives you the time of day. So that tells you a lot.
Wow, that's interesting.
Isn't that interesting? But there's also a huge reversal there, because if a man reaches to a woman who might be in a lower tier, his odds are 2 times better that she'll reply than if he were to reach up to a girl who's, perhaps more desirable according to these demographics. So really interesting takeaway. Now, here's another one. When approaching a more desirable mate, both genders tend to send messages with more words in them. But interestingly, females tend to send message with more positive emotional language, while men tend to do the opposite. So again, if they're reaching up, trying to talk to a more desirable mate, both genders will try harder. Okay, they'll both put more words in their message. But whenever they did an emotional analysis, trying to figure out, okay, the character of the words sent and the sentences framed, did it tend to have a positive, upbeat message or a negative message? If a woman was reaching out to a man, she tended to be upbeat and positive. If a man was reaching up to a woman, he tended to be a little bit negative and not chipper, right? So that's really interesting. So if a woman is messaging a man who she thinks is more desirable, she'll be affirming and flattering. And if a man is messaging a woman who he thinks is more desirable than himself, he'll be a bit negative and snarky. And what's interesting is both approaches were shown to work equally well statistically. So those were the actual things that worked, compared with if a man sends a message that's very positive, he would have less success getting a reply than a man who tended toward the negative a little bit. And so this is a lot of really interesting data here.
I feel like we're slowly sneaking back to our most controversial...
My most controversial?
Yeah. But when
We're not talking about that,
I
Nick.
said
I've already
yours.
apologized. I feel like it's already done. So once upon a time in a different episode, Jim got in a lot of trouble because a male wrote in saying, how can I get a female to pay attention to me? And I taught him a hack that basically this statistic already shows, which is that overly chipper, enthusiastic men tend to be seen with suspicion, and they tend to be ignored a little bit. Men who are a little bit, more negative, a little bit critical, tend to be, I don't know what the trick is, but they tend to get attention. And now the statistics bear this out, Nick. Okay, it's science. It's not Jim's opinion of what will work. It's not seen as manipulative. Both genders are doing something. They are positively or negatively reframing their approach to increase their odds to get what they want, right? Which is the attention. I'm sure these women are not writing messages because they're just so excited about life. I'm sure that, they're upbeating it a little bit because they suspect that it will work. And the data shows us that, in fact, it does work. So this is, anyway, there's the full presentation of the data there. So really fascinating stuff about how dating breaks down, what is successful, what's not, and what trends we're noticing in desirability and the way that people date and the way people approach each other.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So as far as a takeaway from this for any of our listeners who are dating and are using these websites,
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you think would be a good piece of advice that they can?
If your men get older, I think that's the trick. Okay,
Yeah.
A little gray on the sideburns. They're just selling at all the Halloween places. just gray it up a little bit. Add 5 years to your profile age. No, I think it's interesting anyway. So I think that whenever we think of leagues, right? So I think this is a good question that the paper attempted to answer. The paper firstly wanted to discuss, is there such a thing as a league? And what does that mean, right? Well, it does. I mean, there essentially are these kind of leagues that have organically developed. Nobody sat everybody down and said, this is the way we do it in America. There's 330 million of us, right? It's the most diverse nation on earth. And it's a very diverse open system platform. And they sampled 4 different major cities that are very diverse and each side of the country, right? In middle of the country, around the country, everything. So it's interesting anyway to see that there's a natural inclination toward certain demographic profiles. And not to pass judgment on that, but just to say, okay, that exists, and that's interesting to learn. And then the other part, I think, because the first half of the study you can't do anything about, right? The fact that these demographics exist, that doesn't inform a listener. But the second part, I think, kind of does when we think about what to expect from others. And if you're a man, if you're attempting to, quote unquote, reach up and try to message somebody who's 25% higher than you, your odds are poor. Your odds are like 12% that she'll even reply. So consider, diversifying a little bit.
Well, the other thing too with this is that this doesn't take into account one's perception.
No.
Right. So these individuals who believe that they're reaching up or reaching down, do they actually believe that? Because this is all statistically put together. So we can say statistically, this female ranks in this category. We know that based on all these different categories and criteria that we've designed as the study.
Yeah.
But the men don't have that. They're just going off of instinct or whatever they find attractive.
Whatever
do
they're
they
going
believe that they are reaching above?
Is there such a thing as out of our league?
Right. I mean, in their mind, do they actually believe that?
So I didn't write this down, but the study actually discussed that a little bit, and basically through another analysis of what the average is, they did notice that people on average reached for the same tier, though the majority still try about 25% higher. And that was still very meaningful because it taught them that they may blur the line on what's more desirable than themselves, but they're clearly aware of what's less desirable than themselves. So they do have a general median that they generally have a self-awareness of. But I think if anybody ever tells you she's out of your league, it's your friend, right? Like a friend tells you as you're showing your friend the profile, your friend goes, "Hey buddy, keep your options open," and don't be discouraged. And you're like, "Well, why are you saying that? Like, I'm a catch." And you're like, "No, you totally are." But keep hitting that button. So it's interesting data anyway, that humans kind of do tend to align all by themselves into these tiers and tend to pursue people differently. So fascinating research, I think. So
there you go.
Into the dating economy anyway.
All right. You're welcome, America.
You're welcome, America. And to all the people that feel terrible right now, sorry. It's just science. Overcome the data. Be the best version of you.
There you go. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss how to help a family member with an addiction. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Robert Brownie Jr. Mint. Of course, you may have seen Robert Brownie Jr. in one of his many films, such as Iron, Ice Cream Man, Sure Rocky Road Homes, and of course, my favorite, The Flavengers. You like that, Nick?
Robert Brownie Jr.
Robert Brownie Jr. Yeah.
Did he come up with that, or is that yours?
That's his name, but I've come up with the titles.
Oh.
Yeah. If you'd like to join the party to help make the show possible and tap into the special content for patrons only, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
Thank you, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and our next question is about a family member with an addiction.
Drinking etiquette around people in recovery. My 18-year-old son is in rehab for meth and cocaine addiction. He gets out on November 8th after 90 days. For Thanksgiving, he and I will be in Vegas along with 2 other family members. We will be going out for a nice dinner at a restaurant up there. The 3 adults that will be accompanying us all drink wine, and normally we would just order a bottle for the table. Is this appropriate? Should we not drink during the trip? I'm not sure if the 2 other people will abstain. Thanks. Data Scoop.
Oh, that's a really good question. So, I'm really interested in your take on this, Nick, because obviously this is very much inside your wheelhouse. I mean, as I first look at this, the first thing that I would, speak to the listener on is ask yourself how much you value that person's sobriety, right? And if it's hard won, if you've been really scared that they're not going to be successful, and now they kind of are, do you value a glass of wine the same way? And I think that changes everything about us. And the social convention of having a glass of wine, a lot of people use that phrase to mean I want to be a normal red-blooded American. I want to have a Corona on 4th of July. I want to have a glass of wine with my family. You don't want that more than you want somebody's health. And the way that I would challenge you to think about this is if a family member of yours had very strong diabetes and you were like, well, should we order a cake, for the table, afterward? Okay, you can, right? And maybe they don't care. Or maybe if they're still early in their acceptance of their diabetes, this would feel like they're being left out and may tempt them to have a forkful, and that wouldn't be good for their health, right? So if you knew your family member had any other kind of disease that could be affected by the diet of the table, would that affect your menu? And would that affect what you personally care for and choose? I think the answer is usually yes.
Yeah, and I think I can approach this from 2 different standpoints. Number one is a family member, but then I think more importantly, if I were to be talking to your son, I'd be giving him some different advice. Because at the end of the day, this is his journey, and he is going to have to figure out how he will adjust his lifestyle, or how he will adjust how he lives to this new way of living,
Yes.
right? He has to find that, and that burden isn't going to be placed on everybody else, and that's not something that he can live the rest of his life saying everybody else around me has to accompany or has to
Right.
fit with my new lifestyle.
Yeah.
However, that being said, family members do carry a bit of a responsibility, especially in early recovery. So the biggest factor here for me is time.
Right.
Okay, because this question is a completely different question if we're talking about him having 6 months clean
Right.
versus him having 90 days clean.
Yes.
Right? This is a whole different conversation. I always, when talking to a lot of my clients, I'll use the example of when you go to a roller coaster park, and they always have that thing standing there. You're like, you got to be this tall to ride this roller coaster.
Right.
Right? This conversation changes the further someone gets into recovery. So I look at it as like your recovery skills have to be this high or this good before you can go into this environment.
Right.
Right. So will he never be able to go out to dinner with other people who are sharing a bottle of wine?
No.
Of course not. Of course there's going to be a
Right.
time that he's going to be able to do that. Is that time right now?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate question.
Yeah.
And that's what I would encourage your son to really think about,
Yes.
because it's I guess you have to look at the risk involved and is it a risk worth taking?
Right.
Here's the other thing that people get kind of confused about is thinking that once I do this and I go to this dinner and I am successful in staying sober, I don't drink anything, that the battle is over.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
Because what that did is
Triggered
you're
you.
still, you still have that thought process. You still have that, this idea, and that seed is now planted.
Yes.
And so now that's something that he's going to have to work through. And that could take a couple days. Even.
Yeah.
It's something that it kind of lingers. One other point that I want to make too, because the writer talks about meth and cocaine addiction. Doesn't say anything about alcohol.
Right.
And this is the number one question that I always get from people who come into treatment
I know
for
exactly
another
where you're
drug.
going. Yep.
And they say, well, okay, my drug of choice is meth or cocaine.
Right.
Why do I have to give up alcohol?
Alcohol. Yeah.
I've never abused alcohol.
Nothing wrong with a little weed.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a
And-
meth guy. I like uppers.
Yes. And so here's the thing. Oops.
Downers are the cure.
So the important thing to remember about this, am I stating that if you are in recovery for meth or cocaine, that if you use alcohol, you're going to become an alcoholic? No.
No.
I can't say that, and I don't think there's really any data that would support that.
No.
To me, it's not about whether or not you'd become an alcoholic. I'm looking at how does your use of alcohol affect the addictive thinking patterns
Yes.
related to your meth and cocaine.
Yes.
So kind of a little experiment, not an experiment, but a little thing that I used to do in group is I would have people play different roles. So like Jim is going to be Jim, and I'm going to play the role of Jim's addiction.
Oh,
So
yeah, I've seen you do this. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of that voice inside Jim's head.
Right.
So Jim may have all the perfect right intentions and things that he wants to do, but my whole goal is to get him
Yeah.
back to the meth.
Right.
Now,
How
if-
do I do that?
Yeah, if Jim is saying, well, I can drink alcohol, I'm going to be okay.
No meth.
Right.
But Jack Daniels.
I will say, yes.
Yeah, go for that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
you could.
Let me meet you halfway
Right.
on this.
And the reason why isn't because I crave alcohol.
No.
It's because I would rather deal with a drunk Jim
Yep.
than a sober
To
Jim.
lower his ability to fight you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because once you get drunk, you don't care about the drunk. Or even if you get buzzed, you don't care about the buzz. You want your real drug.
Right.
That's what happens.
That's the other piece
You're
of this
done with
too.
this kiddie stuff. You want the
Right.
real thing.
So that's
Yeah.
the other piece of this too. Everybody picks their substance based off of what fits with their personality.
Right.
So I've had a lot of people in groups who will say, yeah, I've done heroin, but it's not my
Doesn't do
thing.
it for me.
Cocaine is
Is
what
my
I
thing.
love.
Right.
And the cocaine person will say, or the heroin will say, heroin addict will say, yeah, I've done cocaine, but
Yeah.
heroin's what I want.
But the common denominators, they've all tried everything.
Right.
They're not like, no, I've never touched that because I
But
don't
here's
have
the
any
thing,
interest.
and this is why one of the biggest problems with doing something like a marijuana maintenance program,
Right.
where people will use marijuana to
To
help
kick
deal with
opioids.
a craving of
Right.
something else, is because your brain has an expectation,
Right.
right? You use meth because you like that experience.
Yes.
If you're using another substance, it's kind of like you're getting a taste of something, but it's not giving you what you want, which ultimately can increase the craving for that drug of choice.
It's just the trigger. And I take it back to the diabetes example. If somebody with diabetes, in the disease of diabetes, the organ that is failing, right, is the pancreas usually. Its inability to produce insulin so that you can digest sugars, okay? So in addiction, the organ that is failing is a section of the brain, you know, and it's the brain itself. So for you to say, oh, okay, I have diabetes, I'm not going to eat Halloween candy, but I will eat pie. Like, or no pie, just ice cream. Okay, just no ice cream, but, you know, pixie sticks. It's like, or soda. Like, it doesn't matter what you're changing it out for. What matters is you're still asking the same organ that's having trouble to overcome a challenge, right? And that's the same problem in addiction, because the brain is the problem. It has addiction problem. So if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to give it meth, I'm not going to give it Coke, but I'm going to expose it to alcohol, you're still triggering the same thing. So to the writer, my final point is, if you want to know what we would be telling your son, I would be sitting your son down, and if your son was saying, yeah, I'm going to go out to Thanksgiving with my family, I would ask him point blank, do you expect them to have any wine or any alcohol? And if he said, well, yeah, it's common in our family to have a glass of wine, I would challenge your son as his therapist and say, I want you to strongly consider not going, or to ask them to abstain, or to change the venue to like a Denny's where they don't have this.
Or I mean, I would never ask somebody to stay away from their family, but okay, well, no, but what I'm saying is, what other safe environments can you associate with your family, but then maybe not go to the dinner?
Right. How can we box out the alcohol?
Right. Yeah. So that is always, I think, probably the easiest solution to this. Now, if obviously we kind of have to roll with the resistance. If he absolutely is not willing to do that, and no, I want to go there, other people shouldn't have to change their lifestyle for what I'm doing, which, I kind of agree with.
Sure.
Then what is your backup plan?
How do you get out of this?
Right.
But I want the writer to see all the effort we would be making as his treatment team.
Yeah, this is
to get him ready for this. This is not an afterthought. Like, we would be like, this is your Super Bowl. And so you as the family, when you realize, to you it isn't after, like, should we, shouldn't we? I'm kind of on the fence. Don't be on the fence, because this is the amount of effort the rehab team is doing to get your kid ready for this.
Yes, so that is a good point, because I think the average person would look at the situation and probably say, this isn't really that big of a deal.
Right.
But you and I, having worked in this environment, know that, well, no, this is a pretty big deal,
because
take
it high.
This sets the course for all these other things that are going to happen.
And it also goes back to what you said. The true danger to me is not when you're at the restaurant and the server's coming around with glasses and
it's later on in the night.
Yeah, he's not asking your son, did you want me to leave your wine glass or fill it up or take it away? That's not the challenge.
No.
The challenge is 48 hours later, when that brain is still tingling and thinking about this, and now he's in his own head and he's thinking, I want to be normal. I'm a normal young man. I'm going to drink with my friend. Wow, we've taken it so much further than that. So if a family asks me, hey, take it or leave it, I say leave it. I say get rid of it, don't have it. Acknowledge that you have a family member who has a disease. Don't make them feel less than for that, and adapt your family's decision-making and choices because of that. And, if you need to quietly talk to the other family members behind the scenes and go, hey, my son just came out of treatment, out of respect for his disease, I'm asking that we don't have any alcohol that night, and not make it a big deal. Most people who are not monsters will go, yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for telling us. Because most of us don't know what's right and wrong. But as therapists, if the family were in my office right now asking me, what should we do? I'd be like, you don't need this. Trust me, you will not miss that wine. It is not worth it, right? You will drink that wine and forget all about it in an hour. He will not drink that wine and be thinking about it for the next 72. Right. It's not worth it. The cost-benefit analysis isn't there. So I say ditch it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're thinking about this. I'm glad you're asking these questions. That is a proactive approach, and that's what I want to see families doing. That's often why I want families to have their own addictions counselor so that they can navigate this kind of stuff for themselves.
And there's a chance that your son is going to look at the situation and he's probably going to say, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll be okay.
Right.
And maybe he will be, but I would still at a minimum say we have to have a plan in place.
Right.
Okay. So what is your exit strategy? How will you know when you're not okay?
Absolutely.
That's a question people never ask themselves.
And when they're in early recovery, man, they're so vulnerable.
And it's hard to recognize because you're going into a situation that you have no experience with, so you're not sure what the landmarks are that you're going to see that would be an indicator to you that something's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And good luck with this. Big decision to make, and good luck as you attempt to navigate this for your family. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we talk about how to deal with feelings of being unwanted. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's second Theraproducer is Kyla Lansbury. Kyla is committed to making the show possible because it destigmatizes mental health and gives real advice. We definitely thank Kyla for her contribution and supporting today's episode.
And or Kyla, if that's how you pronounce it.
It's Kyla.
Oh, it is Kyla?
Yeah, we had this whole Twitter thing. She actually said thank you for pronouncing it correctly.
Good job, Nick.
Because I have a cousin who pronounces it that way as well, or spells it that way. Interesting fun fact.
Yeah.
If you'd like to join the party and help make the show possible and tap into special content for patrons only, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next listener writes in about feeling unwanted.
Hey guys, this is an issue I've had that seems to be flaring up more in the last few years, without a discernible source that I can identify. There are times when I'm out with friends, or would go out to meet new people or meet with friends, and I'm hit with this wave of feeling like no one really wants me there, I'm just a bother, I'm annoying, etc. Obviously, not everyone's going to like me, hard as that may be to believe, but these feelings come out of nowhere and are not linked to any specific act that I'm doing or that the other people are even doing. I recognize that feelings aren't facts, but in those moments, the feeling can be completely overwhelming. And even if I'm able to rationalize it after the fact, it's still difficult to deal with in the moment. Is this something that you guys have ever heard of? Or is this possibly connected to something else and just manifesting on its own? Thanks, Anonymous.
Heard of and experienced.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure I'm wanted on this podcast right now.
Notice how quiet it gets.
Jacob's not even making eye contact.
No.
He's just looking down. Yeah.
Doing a great job, Nick.
Thank you, Jacob.
I'm done. I quit.
I'm going to my trailer.
I'm going to my trailer.
No, I can relate to this a lot, especially at weddings. I will go to a wedding and not talk to the bride or groom the entire time.
Okay.
Because one of my biggest fears is being in the way.
Oh.
Or feeling like I'm an inconvenience for other people.
Okay.
So if I go to a wedding, I feel like, oh, they're busy. It's their busy day. I
yeah.
don't want to, but then I don't say anything.
Okay.
This actually happened at Scoop Fest because I remember I was talking to Laura on the way back.
Okay.
It was Saturday night. We were driving back home after the event Saturday, and I was thinking, man, I have not said hi to Paul or Matt.
Oh yeah.
The entire weekend.
I did that too.
I said hi to Jacob, but I've spent more time with Jacob. I can feel a little bit more comfortable
right.
but with Matt and Paul, I was like, oh, they're really busy. I didn't.
Yeah.
And then we were driving back Saturday night, and I said to Laura, I was like, man, I feel terrible
antisocial.
Because I feel like we're using the studio. I haven't even said thank you. I haven't said anything. Like it comes off very stuck up and obnoxious.
Sure.
And
well, you are those things.
I am, but I don't want to send the message.
You don't want people to figure it out.
Am.
No, it's funny because I resonate the same thing. And I remember I was walking down from the green room, and Matt was walking right past me. I was like, "Hey, man, great show. You're doing great." And I kept walking, and I wasn't going to say anything because I'm thinking these dudes are running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And he actually called me out, like in a positive way. He was like, "Hey, Jim, is everything going good?" You know, like invited me to conversation. And I was like, "Yeah." And so like then I came up and chatted him up. But I felt like I had an invitation. But to this writer, that feeling, right, of feeling like I'm an inconvenience, feeling like I'm unwanted. And the writer used a famous phrase of mine, which I'm really grateful he did. I know that feelings aren't facts, but even though I'm aware of that mentally, and I know that's mathematically true, I am overwhelmed, and I'm a little bit frozen, and I'm a little bit paralyzed. I like that the writer is halfway there. The writer's already able to challenge, is this a feeling or is this a fact? And the thing I want the writer to do, and the thing I want anybody that's going through this to do, I want you to quietly in your own mind put your thought on trial, okay? And I want you to have a little defense attorney and a little prosecutor, and I want Judge Judy up there, snarkily looking down at the evidence, and remember that it's innocent until proven guilty. You have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that everybody here doesn't like you and that you shouldn't be here. And where's the evidence for that? Because if you find yourself invited to an event in which other people are there and they know your name, that is a lot of evidence that people are kind of welcoming of you, or you wouldn't have found your way there that day, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not all cheering for you wearing, like I love you t-shirts or whatever, but the evidence is actually there that they do like you. And I would actually usually take that feeling and turn it on its head. So I feel like I am not wanted here. I feel like maybe I'm falsely interpreting that I'm appreciated in this environment. And that's the real fear, is that, oh, I'm embarrassed because maybe I don't understand that these people don't want me. What if secretly they don't enjoy me, right? And we've all had a bad moment where, somebody springs it on us that we're not liked. But the fact that you're even having that feeling is actually evidence that you are in a group right now and you are surrounded by people who are interacting with you, and you're able to second guess yourself, which is actually all evidence for the defense. It's actually all evidence that you somehow ended up in an environment where there are other humans and you're put in this position to even guess this, which is actually evidence that the thought is not true.
Right. Yeah. And I think I was going to kind of say the same thing that to our listener. You're already ahead of the game.
Yes.
You're already more advanced than most people who have this problem, because
they just take the feeling as a fact,
right?
And now they believe it,
right? And you're questioning this. You know that this isn't true. It's just how do you overcome the feeling?
Yes,
right. And I think the only way that you really truly overcome the feeling is it's going to take a lot of time. But as my high school basketball coach said, keep your feet moving.
Yeah.
Right. Never just stand there. You always have to have your feet moving. You always have to constantly stay in motion.
Right.
I'd give you the same advice when it comes to social situations. So when you're starting to have that feeling of, I'm starting to feel like I'm not liked, I'm starting to feel like I'm not wanted.
Right.
Initiate a conversation.
Right.
Like
challenge
force yourself into it.
Test the thought.
Yeah.
Put it to the test.
Keep your feet moving. And then you will prove that that's not the case.
I love that. And whenever I'm dealing with somebody who has anxiety, right, or somebody who's having these kinds of paralyzing thoughts, whether that's social anxiety, or depression, I usually teach them 5 techniques. And, we go over this slowly and we work on each one of the techniques. They form an acronym called PAUSE. And E is for evidence. That's the end of pause. And that's the one we're talking about now.
Oh.
PAUSE, not PAWS. You're thinking about like addiction treatment, pause symptoms, right?
Post-acute withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, not those.
Okay.
So these are techniques for thinking and challenging thoughts. But the evidence one is a big one. Another one is understanding, and that's the U, which asks this: if I choose to believe this potential mirage that I am unliked, what am I likely to do? And the answer is usually withdraw.
Right.
Put up my walls, defend myself, and I will seem cold and aloof to these humans who I am scared don't like me. Right?
Which proves the point. Right?
Which actually has the reciprocal effect.
The
Because
self-fulfilling
my
prophecy.
goal I'd like to be accepted. But if I withdraw, I am less likely to be accepted and nourished in this environment. And then I ask you to understand the opposite. If I choose not to believe this idea, if I choose not to believe this mental mirage, what might I do instead? And the answer is, if I chose not to believe that these people don't like me, if I choose to believe that they in fact do like me, then I would feel more confident, I'd feel more relaxed, and I would choose to like them back.
Right.
And I would try to send a signal of liking them because I feel like they already like me first. And I would need to do that, right? So that's one of the other acronyms that I'll use in that. But you're halfway there. You're starting with that first conscious thought of this might be a feeling or a fact. Now we need to learn the techniques of how to unpack that feeling and how to analyze it differently so that we can get to different results. Mm-hmm. But this is a great question. I think everybody can resonate with this.
Absolutely.
And I agree with Nick's basketball coach. Keep your feet moving. And I'm sure he told you that while you were sitting on the bench. He said, Tangeman, shuffle those feet. He said, Nick, I need you to get in there and bring Johnson some water.
Okay.
So get him a water bottle right now. You sweep that floor, buddy.
One of our other
sweep that floor.
One of our other Theraproducers, who I went to high school with.
Oh, Dr. Don.
Yeah. So he and I were on the basketball team together, and we were the 35-point guys.
Oh, okay.
Which basically means
if
that
you're 35 points up
or down.
You're the Rudies.
Yeah. If we have a 35-point lead or a deficit, then that's when we get into the game.
You had a chance. Oh, you're still 2 steps better than me, buddy. I was on the debate team, so you got me. You got me. Great question to the writer, and thank you for writing in. I think so many listeners empathize with that. So, Nick, we have just enough time to go over our apologies, talk to our patrons, and actually read some reviews. We got some reviews that piled in.
Sure do.
So we'll have a chance to kind of go over that. So first off with Jim's apologies, dear children's songs, 80s ballads, and 90s rap, I apologize for attempting to play covers of you live on Twitter and promise to always delete any such attempts in the future. And thanks, Nick, for trying to get me to play some stupid-ass Prairie.
Amy by Pure Prairie League.
Jacob, does that ring a bell? Nothing, because it's not a thing. And Nick was like, this counts as a children's song because in Iowa, we played that. And I'm like, yeah, by that freaking merit, rakes are toys, and like shovels.
When you get to the chorus, everybody knows the song.
Nobody even
guarantee
knows the
it.
song.
I have a cousin named Amy.
See? That's about as close
enough.
as we're getting to
Close
it.
enough.
Dear person who burned down their home trying to kill a spider with a blowtorch, I'm sorry that I feel like you did the right thing and encouraged others to do this also. That was probably irresponsible. Every time I see a spider, I'm like, burn this house down. We're selling this. This is done here. Dear all preteen girls, I'm sorry that I said you are all Satan-worshipping homicidal sociopaths. Dear Satan worshippers, I'm sorry I associated preteen girls with your religion. That was uncalled for and besmirched the dignity of your group. So that's true.
All right. And we have some patrons we need to thank. Some
Absolutely.
of our new folks that just joined us recently. Oh, wait. I don't have the updated list.
We have THERAPALs. So our THERAPAL sponsors, we want to welcome Christine Elliser, Christy, Hylian Scoop, Joshua Schultz, and Sundog. And we also want to thank our THERAPODs. It's our tradition that we've been doing all of them, but we're only supposed to be doing them once a month. But this is probably the last time I'm going to say all of our THERAPODs. Want to thank Brad Kiefaver, Malaya is a brand new one, Leon Kassab is a brand new one, Scoopaholic is brand new, Corey Owens, David Younce, John Baconship, Kate Keller, who upgraded hers to $7 a month because she was trying to fight to be the alpha THERAPOD in today's bidding war that happened on Twitter.
Still going on.
It's still going on. Erupted out of nowhere. Lori Kellenbach Eltsroth, Linda Brandmeier, Mandy Abaila, Manuela Musaku, Peter Van Pelt, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Scoopstronaut, who keeps upgrading hers as well. I think she's up to like 535 because she was outbidding other people. Steve, who was actually the cause of Scoopstronaut doing that, and he's also been outbidding. And the reigning champion as of today, Ice Blue Scoop, who kicked up hers to $10 just so she could be the alpha THERAPOD.
That is
which
so cool.
They created on their own. I didn't ask anybody to do this. They just all started fighting each other. So they're doing all very well. And of course, we want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers, who make everything we do possible. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie, Junior Mint, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop, Vialon, Judy Schneider, Gray Whitaker, and Dr. Ben Dawn.
And if you would like to, sorry, I caught off guard. If you would like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy things like our book club and discussion groups, go to www.patreon.com/therapy and join the party.
Now we've got a few reviews. If you ever write us a review on iTunes or Facebook, we will actually read it out loud as long as it's 5 stars. And first we've got a Facebook review from David Vialon, one of our bosses in the Theraproducer community. And he gave us 5 stars and he said, demystifying and removing the stigma surrounding therapy. This is one entertaining and informative episode at a time, except for episode 13. I'm proud to help support the Pod Therapy vision of accessible mental health care. Thank you, David.
In another Facebook review, Brian Lehman writes, great podcast about demystifying and destigmatizing therapy. This is a crucial mission that I support wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Brian. In Facebook, and she also posted this on iTunes, Lauren Willoughby wrote, quote, my husband and I enjoy listening to Pod Therapy on our many road trips from Woodbridge, Virginia to Wilson, North Carolina to visit family. They tend to cover subjects that I find helpful for myself regarding anxiety and depression. We enjoy their program very much. Thank you, Pod Therapy, the Willoughbys. Thank you, Willoughbys, from Pod Therapy.
Another iTunes review came in from That Brooke Style, who writes, so I started listening because someone suggested it to me. These guys are really smart, funny, kind, and compassionate about the questions that they answer. I will listen to the rest of the episodes and wait for new releases. 5 stars.
Wow, that was very generous. And once they listen to the rest of the episodes, I think they'll take back all those other things they said. Last one for today came from iTunes. This is from Liz Storm, who wrote, these guys talk about psychology in ways that are both funny and informative. They foster a fantastic community and really care about their listeners. It's always a pleasure. And if you'd like your review to be read on air, give us 5 stars on Facebook or on iTunes. And of course, we have just a quick announcement to wrap up the show. Our book club has begun. You can join us by going to patreon.com/therapy, kicking in at a minimum $1, and you can grab the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, and jump in with us. It promises to be very exciting, considering Nick has already read the book and didn't like it very much, or has a lot of notes.
I loved it.
You have a lot of notes.
Yes,
a lot of notes about it. And I expect that I'm just going to rage against anything that I didn't personally write or get paid for.
Yep, exactly.
That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode by copying and pasting the link in the description. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to add your own advice to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tanchman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.